Hello and welcome back to Paarl in South Africa. This is episode 151 of the CRICKETher Weekly. And Raf, you've been out and about this morning, haven't you? It's a Sunday morning, but you took yourself off to a very special place.
Thanks, Sid. Yeah, so I actually visited a township today called Khayelitsha. A township is an area in South Africa where historically, unfortunately because of kind of a legacy of apartheid, a lot of very poor black South Africans live. But this was actually, so this was in the township, but it was actually part of a programme, a new programme, the launch of a new, what's being called a Women's Empowerment Programme, that's being run by the Catch Trust, which is formerly the Gary Kirsten Foundation, and also with funding from the MCC Foundation, which is the charitable arm of the MCC. And the MCC Foundation are involved in lots of amazing projects, kind of centring around trying to develop women's cricket, both back home within the UK, but they're also involved in projects with women in places like Nepal. They did do some work in Afghanistan, do work with Syrian refugees, etc. So there's loads of great work that's been going on, but as part of this kind of moment of the World Cup, the Women's World Cup coming to South Africa for the first time since 2005, this new programme has been launched, this new Women's Empowerment Programme. And basically it's about using cricket as a kind of vehicle to transform the lives of some of these girls who are living in very difficult situations, who are experiencing things like gender-based violence, and just generally having very difficult lives. But today was kind of, it was a really upbeat session. They're actually playing a cricket match this afternoon, and they've been playing cricket yesterday, and I was able to see them in the nets just having a great time. Cricket for these girls is, it's a safe space for them. They talk today about these girls having a cricket family, and it being somewhere that they can kind of come to maybe escape some of the difficult situations in which they find themselves. But the programme itself is going to be, it's not just about playing cricket, although it is about that, and some of them may have aspirations to go on and even play cricket for South Africa, because why not? But actually the programme itself is also about things like running health workshops about menstruation, about healthy eating, about trying to tackle and understand gender-based violence, and building confidence really in the lives of these girls. So actually it was really amazing, and it just puts so much of what we talk about on the CRICKETher Weekly into perspective, actually, because cricket for those girls is not just about an IPL auction, a women's IPL auction that's happening thousands of miles away where there's loads of money, or who's going to win the World Cup. It's actually about, as I say, being a safe space for them. I think partly that programme is powerful because some of what we've seen over the last few days is that attitudes to women's sport within South Africa are still kind of quite problematic compared with some of the attitudes that we see back home in the UK. And we actually watched that World Cup opening tournament, the World Cup opener, South Africa v Sri Lanka, from a bar in Paarl. We weren't at the ground, we were in Paarl, and we spoke to a few people about their awareness of the World Cup, and there wasn't a huge level of awareness, was there, Sid?
No, I mean, you spoke to our bar server, and he basically said, I was a cricket fan when I was younger, but these days, I have to work too hard, and I just don't have time to follow cricket, and he didn't even know that there was a World Cup on. And within the bar there were 20 odd occupied tables, and there was one other table that was paying much attention at all to the game, and in fact on that table really it was only one guy out of four that was really paying attention to the game, although the other three definitely were joining in by the end when it looked like South Africa might just creep over the line at the end.
So what did you make of the cricket, Sid? South Africa being beaten by Sri Lanka, it was a bit of a shock in the tournament opener.
Yeah, well, it was a great result for Sri Lanka, wasn't it? I think the one of the really exciting things for Sri Lanka is this girl Vishmi, who really looks like, have Sri Lanka found around their Hayley Matthews. That we talked about the fact that Hayley Matthews, it was the one person at the West Indies. You really need at least one person that's like a really good player to even kind of put you on the map, and that's possibly not enough to win you any World Cups going forward, but at least it means that you can be competitive, and we saw that again with Hayley Matthews this week. Is Vishmi that player that's going to take over from Atapattu? Because of course Atapattu was still crucial to the result, and Sri Lanka, they made over a run a ball, and that put a little bit of pressure on South Africa, and they basically wilted under that pressure, didn't they? And they didn't quite get over the line, and actually the scorecard makes it look much closer than it really was, isn't it? It was a classic example of that thing of, like, I always say, nobody makes 10 off the last over in a women's T20. Of course, that's not absolutely true, but if you look at the numbers of all of the matches been played in WBBL, international and everything, it's so rare that it's essentially 0% of times people make 10 off the last over, because the pressure just gets to you. That's a classic example of it.
Yeah, and as I previously said in an episode of the CRICKETher Weekly, every finger then pointed at the coach going, why didn't you play Donna van Niekerk? They created a rod for their own backs there. So that pressure, as you say, I think it did get to them. And they've got a crucial game coming up tomorrow against New Zealand, which could well decide whether South Africa remain in with a chance of going through to the semi-finals. If they lose that game, don't think they're mathematically out.
They won't be mathematically out, no, but they will be in a lot of trouble, because they'll need a lot of other things to go their way if they've lost 2 matches. So, yeah.
Okay, and we also saw a couple of other games so far this tournament. Yesterday, here in Paarl, we saw New Zealand absolutely thrashed by Australia. That was pretty predictable, and especially predictable when Megan Shute managed to remove both Susie Bates and Sophie Devine within the first 6 balls. And so there you go. So we're not going to talk too much about that, but the England-West Indies game, that was an interesting one, wasn't it, Sid?
Well, West Indies, again, they played perhaps better than we might have been thinking. Hayley Matthews, but it's all about Hayley Matthews, isn't it? She gave them a really good power play, despite the fact that Stephanie Taylor at the other end was really struggling and looking like somebody who was actually not ready to come back. So we'd spoken to Hayley Matthews the day before, and we'd asked her specifically about Stephanie Taylor, and Hayley had gone, well, maybe she plays, maybe she doesn't. It really looks like possibly she shouldn't have done, because she did not look ready.
Well, what I thought was odd was that she was bumped right up to the top of the order, so they were basically going, you haven't played any competitive cricket in months, you didn't play in any of the warm-ups, you don't know anything about the pitch conditions, but here you go, you've got to open the batting.
Yeah, and it didn't work out that well in that sense, but Hayley Matthews carried them through the power play, and again, they made more than a run a ball. That gave England something to chase, and at the halfway point we definitely were sitting there thinking, well, England could stuff this up. It was one of the things that it was really hot. It was absolutely unbearable dry heat. If you were out there for 5 minutes, then someone from England, myself, that's kind of not used to those temperatures, it was tough. You could see that the England girls were kind of struggling in the field. I mean, they were putting in 110%, but they were not getting to the ball, chasing around the boundary quite as quickly as they would have done in more normal conditions. They'd been out in the field, and then they were coming out to bat. They were already tired. We thought they could mess this up, but boy, did they not mess it up. They really went for it.
Yeah. The birth of John Ball, as I put it in my piece for The Guardian, because that is how Nat Siver-Brunt described it in the post-match, and it was quite amusing because she basically said, "Oh, we haven't really been talking about Baz Ball. I'm just going to throw John Ball out there," and I said, "Is that a thing?" And she said, "Let's make it a thing." So we're making it a thing. But it really, we've been quite sceptical about everyone talking up England, and also England talking up themselves and going, "Oh, we're playing differently purely because we've got a new coach." But it really did feel like a bit of a sea change in the way they approached that run chase. Sophia Dunkley's just a bit bonkers now. She's opening the batting and she's just coming out and just going bosh, and they're not she's not hitting it for sixes, but they're totally taking the power play for what it's meant to be, and they're just hitting it over the infield the whole time, and they're able to do that, and they got a very high boundary count yesterday compared with what we normally see from England in T20s.
Yeah, no, I mean, at a point, definitely a high-risk game. Dunks could have been run out in the first over. There were a couple where very early on where there could have been catches made. But they're hitting it very hard, and they're making it count, and they're giving England that fast start that you need to kind of take the pressure off the rest of the lineup, and that meant that Heather Knight and Nat Siver at the end.
Siver-Brunt.
Nat Siver-Brunt could actually, a little bit, take their foot off the gas.
So what I was going to say was that John Lewis's mantra is walk towards the danger. walk towards the danger, Sid, and that is exactly what they were doing. It's not without risk. People are going to get out, but that's the way they're approaching it, and they are certainly doing it in a way that's authentic and really does actually follow through. Or they're not just talking the talk; they're walking the walk here.
Yeah, and if they play like that against Australia, when it comes to it, when push comes to shove, that's the kind of performance that could see them beat Australia. Of course, we also saw Australia yesterday walk all over New Zealand, and Australia. You made an interesting comment about Australia, Raf, where you said that even when Australia play badly, they play really well, because actually Australia, in some ways, we looked at that innings and we're like, Australia haven't been doing very well here. They probably made like 90, 100 after about 17 overs.
Well, they lost so many wickets.
They've made 150.
Yeah, but they lost all of these wickets at regular intervals. They didn't ever quite get a partnership together, and they still put 170 on the board. Where's the fairness in that, Meg Lanning? Anyway, we better wrap up in a minute. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. As we say, we've got a couple of interesting games coming up tomorrow, as well as a certain auction that's happening in a certain country several thousand miles away, of which we will say no more. But we have got England v Ireland, the neighbours that never meet. Sid, I've just stolen that was yours, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is the first time they played since 2012. So it's been over 10 years since England have played their kind of nearest neighbours in the sort of the first class professional cricket circuit. That's a bit ridiculous, but let's see how it goes.
Yeah, let's see how they get on. Thanks very much for tuning in. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.